stimuli. So an SD is an antecedent stimulus that's correlated with the availability of reinforcement for a particular response class. So an SD is a discriminative stimulus, right? A stimulus is any change in the environment that is, I think that the official definition is it causes a sensory change in the organism, right? So a sensory change can be anything that we see, feel, hear, smell, taste, right? And so it can be, a stimulus can be me seeing the lamp next to my desk. It can be me hearing a ambulance go by, right? So a discriminative stimulus is something that invokes a response. It lets me know that there's an availability of reinforcement. S delta is something that does not let me know that there's going to be reinforcement available. It's just everything else in the environment. The history of reinforcement in the presence of the SD is actually what teaches us behavior. It's stimulus control. I've seen lamps before, and if it is dark or not light enough for my preferences, then seeing the lamp signals to me that I could turn on the lamp and that there would be more light, that behavior would be reinforced, right? So it's all about our history of reinforcement, which your discussion guides, or your concept guides rather, have discussed in the past. So here's an example, right? So the SD, for example, maybe we see a tap on the faucet and it's marked with a blue dot or the letter C. So then we have known from our history of reinforcement and our knowledge, if this is common in Western bathrooms, that that's going to be a cold water. And so then if I go up to the bathroom faucet and I turn the tap with the blue dot or the C, then I am positively reinforced with cold water. So the consequence, if this is like an ABC 3-term contingency, is cold water is presented, right? So this term, what happens here in this third box, we refer to that as the reinforcer. Now, if what came out of there was a green sludgy goo, right? I probably would never want to turn that tap again, and we wouldn't then call that the reinforcer. We might call that the punisher, right? So that would be an SP plus, because that would be the presentation. So it'd be a plus. It's the addition to the environment of a punisher. But it's really what happens in the future that lets you know whether it's reinforcing or punishing, which I'll get to in a minute. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So this is positive reinforcement. We see the plus because it's an addition to the environment, because turning the tap marked with the blue dot or the C occurs more often in the future. I have learned, I'm under stimulus control, that when I see that, I am going to continue to turn that tap when I need cold water, right? So the SD, the discriminative stimulus, signaled to me that the reinforcer or cold water was available. Now, I'm going to give you another example. This sink on the left is my parents' sink. Sink on the right is my sink. You can see, or my faucet in the kitchen. You can see that they look somewhat similar, right? We have a lever sticking out to the right. It's got that big J hook. It's got the detachable faucet, which is very helpful for getting sticky toddler food off of their high chairs. But in my parents' house, they have very, very hot water. My siblings and I joke that it's like piped in straight from the core of the earth. So when you take the lever and push it all the way up to the top, it is scalding hot. And so my immediate response is that I move that lever to the middle. And then the water temperature decreases, right? It's a colder, more manageable, not going to burn yourself temperature. So that is negative reinforcement. So you can see here the annotation is SR minus. I am reinforced. My behavior of moving the lever to the middle versus cranking it all the way up to the top, that is reinforced. And I am more likely in the future to only turn the lever up to the middle, not to crank it all the way up. My house, on the other hand, for whatever reason, my water is not hot at all. It takes a very long time for me to get hot water. So if I want warm water, I turn my faucet all the way up to the top, right? And so that there's an example of negative reinforcement. When I go to my parents' house, I always remember, in the past, it's really, really hot. And so I need to remember that I only move it to the middle. So as a review, the difference between reinforcement and punishment: reinforcement is something that increases or maintains behavior. Punishment decreases behavior. When something is positive, we're just adding a stimulus to the environment. When it's negative, we're removing the stimulus, right? So in reinforcement then, positive is we're adding generally something pleasant, something to increase or maintain behavior. And when it is negative reinforcement, there's generally some sort of aversive stimulus. It could be scalding hot water. Other examples could be like smelly garbage. We're removing a stimulus to increase or maintain behavior. Punishment, on the other hand, is used to decrease a behavior. So if we have positive punishment, we are adding an aversive stimulus to decrease behavior. If we have negative punishment, we're removing a pleasant stimulus, like perhaps when my son doesn't get dressed quickly enough in the morning, I might turn off the television. So I remove it to decrease his avoidance behavior.